So I'm just gonna keep working on my scene, um, and adjust things, revise things. Um, we started with the child character walking up the stairs with a teddy bear, and then I had her pass by this ball. The ball rolls over, but I think what I'm gonna do at this point is, um, or as part of the narrative, is the ball is actually gonna hit the little model and knock it down. And then we talked about what that might look like. You can see my two monitors are sort of displaying the same information. I'm just going to uncheck this cinematic control so that I can move this camera freely. And I can kind of zoom out and look at other elements. The other part of my scene, change the field of view here. I'm just going to widen this up a little bit, set it to 50. Or roughly around 50. There's my little staging area. I'm gonna hit F to focus on that. And if you recall, I was experimenting with what that toy falling down begins to look like. And if I put a camera there or not, looks like I didn't, right? But I just want to like create this scene where I can simulate the toy falling down, right? And I kind of like the way the ball bounces. And so what I might even do is give my model a uh, spherical collider so that I can get the ball, or I can get the model to the model of the Nakagen capsule tower to sort of behave in the way that the sphere is behaving, as opposed to that block, which is just kind of like collapsing. A couple of things I did was I changed the physics material. um, this is cardboard. I actually want to make this rubber. Let's see if we can find rubber. And then same with the ball here. The ball I already set to rubber. So now if I hit the simulate, it bounces a little bit more. This thing is spinning quite a bit. So maybe what I want to do is reset the rotation. And then I'm just going to rotate it. Where's my widget? For some reason, my widget is not showing up. If I select the camera, yeah, nothing is displaying my widget. Hmm, that's strange. So let's pick that up. UE5 widget has disappeared. wonder if it has something to do with my cinematics report. Let's try going into a different level and see if that resolves it. Um, next. So let's try going into this other map. Now if I select my object, the widget appears. So I wonder what is happening with... There you go. So right now I'm not in cinematic control, so I'm just gonna turn that on, and I have a feeling that that might that might be causing the problem. So let's go to our level sequencer, open level sequence. Okay, this is all right. Well, whatever was causing that, or switching from one level to the next, seems to have resolved it. And so let's just keep going. So let's simulate. And now it's kind of doing this little flip. Right, and you'll notice that there are just, it's not going to behave exactly the same way each time. And so we'll have to maybe take a few, do a few takes and get it to look the way I want it to look. I also want this scene to be in slow motion. And so another thing I might look up is Unreal Engine 5 sequencer, and then do slow motion. And there are probably tutorials that will allow us to do something in slow motion or record a video in slow motion, or I can just increase my frame rate and then play that back at 24 frames per second. So usually a slow motion camera is actually taking more frames so that when you play it back at a slower rate, it's going to look like the film has been slowed down, or it's playing in slow motion. So I might set up a camera here and set this to like 60 frames per second, do a capture and then play it back slowly, or edit that footage in After Effects or Premiere. But there are a couple of different ways. I'm sure we can figure out how to do the slow motion scene, but for the blockout scene, I'm just going to keep it running at regular speed, and then we'll figure out how to slow that down later on if we decide that that's a look that we want to go for. Okay, so there's 3 scenes, and then I do have quite a bit of real estate here to fill. And so what I think I want to do is just create a general footage showing the camera just kind of spiraling up the ramp. And so if we go back and let's take a look at our Moreau board. Right. Excuse me. In my Moreau board, I was just equating the ascending of these spiral stairs to be equivalent to time. So I might just include that as a general shot for 30 seconds. There's just someone climbing the steps. And you know, if I wanted to, I can just draw a quick little storyboard. Just do that in a row where let's do more reasonable thickness, right? So that looks pretty much the same. But anyway, basically the scene is going to be moving down, right? Scene direction, right? But I want to be able to kind of look into these doors and then see that window and see like perspectively the interior, and there's just going to be a parallax effect as the scene slides to the bottom right as my character, right, and we'll call this character movement, right? And so what I'm interested in doing is capturing a few of these moments where I'm passing by the door. Maybe the character's back will be on this side, or you see the character's face kind of on this side, or but the character will be blurred out because not necessarily the focus of attention, but just to indicate that we're following this character as she climbs up the steps. But the focus of attention, right? And I'll put a little F here to note the focus, is to look inside of these capsules, and maybe we'll see like the individual aspects of each of these capsules, similar to what we're seeing in these scenes, right? So trying to incorporate some of this imagery into the capsules themselves, and then I'll figure out how to kind of model and individualize these spaces as the character is moving up, and I might try to use some projections to turn each of those images into models, or I could just model each one individually. But for now, again, we're just blocking out, so I just want to get that scene or the camera movement to work, and so let's start setting that up. Okay. What I'm going to want to do is I want to create a new shot that's going to happen below this shot, and I'll have to create a new sequence and add a new camera. And what I'll probably end up using is using a rig rail that's going to take me from the bottom, and I'm just going to keep climbing up so I get like a view like that. Let's go to the unlit so we can see, right? So I'm going to start from down here and move up so the character is walking past this, and then she'll continue to move, and then past this I guess maybe she'll do that, maybe past this view and then keep rising. She'll pass this view, right, continuing to go up the steps, and then she'll pass this view looking inside, and I'll make a determination as to what kind of camera I would need to do that, but she's just constantly moving up and around, right? And so let's set up a rig rail, right, because in this case the the movement is a little bit more complex, and so I'm going to want to use a rig rail, and I'm going to start from this point and then just keep climbing up. So let's set up our camera rig rail and drag it into our scene. So here's essentially point A. I'm going to rotate this by 90 degrees and then move this around. And then point B, I guess what we can do is just move these points as we go. So I want to move point B. Oops. in the X and Y orientation only, right? I might rotate this say by 90 degrees. I actually want a bit of a smooth, right? So now I just kind of have to add spline points to just help. Don't want to move it in the Z-axis, right? So this can get a little bit fiddly. But what you're ultimately trying to do is just get a nice, consistent shot that's going to take us up the tower. So I'm going to hold down Alt and add another spline point, and I'm going to move this over to the stair, right? And you know, this doesn't have to be perfect, and you'll just kind of tweak things as you go. And you'll see as you add more and more spline points, you'll have to just kind of roughly finagle it. And we can see we're now at the base of more steps. So let's move this point down to here. Grab this point, that over here, maybe stretch it a touch, right? And then that a little bit closer to the wall, right? But you get the idea. So I'm going to add this point. I'm just going to climb the stairs with this rig rail. So hold down Alt, drag this point, move this out, move this out. This forward. Just keep going. Alt, drag, and drag in the X, Y. Something up. Yeah, that's okay. Grab this point, and just, you know, adjusting my Bezier handles to get the curvature of this move to be fairly smooth. By stretching this out, I can just kind of change the influence of that curve. So again, just trying my best to move the character, or at least just simulate the movement of the character um, to this idea of like climbing the stairs. And I'll certainly keep tweaking this as I go. Um, and so we're just taking a good first pass to get a rough idea of what this move is going to look like. Oops, grab the wrong one. There it is. Where is this point? There it is. This. Something like that. And then Alt and drag. Just feels a little bit. Something like that. And let's just keep going. Alt. This photo. This in. And you probably don't want it to be super rigid either, because you'll start to see that the camera move is really rigid and somewhat unnatural. And so having some inconsistency will add to a little bit of the realism or this. And if you guys want to get really sophisticated with the cinematics, there's something you could do called camera shake, which is literally just simulating the shaking of the camera as if it were handheld. And this is another thing that you can do to add a little bit more realism and simulate like a much more natural movement. But these are like more like fine-tuning elements, and so we probably won't go through camera shakes now, but you can certainly add camera shake if you want to simulate that level of realism. So let's just keep working at climbing our steps. I'm more interested in just laying out the initial path, and then we can add details as we go, right? Big picture first, and then add detail as we go. So I want to just work with my curves. Right. And I probably don't need all of this. But since I'm doing it, I might as well just have a little bit more than what I need. rather than this. Just trying to smooth this curve out a little bit. So I'm just alt dragging new points, just essentially adjusting their Bezier weights by clicking on the point and just moving these, right? You can see like this purple line is connected to this point, and it just affects the way the spline is orienting itself. So those lines are basically working as a tangent to the curve, and depending on how long that tangent line is, it indicates how influential that particular point is to the rest of its curves, right? Hopefully you've done this in like Illustrator as you're making points using the pen tool, but it's the same thing. Okay. I think that's probably all I need to do but let's just go up more, so steps. Back a little bit. Maybe I'll stop here, right? And so as you can see, we've gone up quite a bit. So I want another camera. I'm gonna copy one of the cameras I already have, right? I'm just gonna duplicate it. Just under edit, yeah. So under edit, I'm gonna duplicate it, and I'm gonna take this cam and rename it. Let's go to edit, rename, and this will be called CineCam. Let's call it Spiral, right? And then we have our camera rig rail here. I'm just gonna extend this out, and this is called camera rig rail 3. I'm gonna rename this as well and call this camera rig rail spiral. And I'm going to drag this camera onto that rig rail. Right, so now this is the child of that rig rail. I'm going to reset the location of that camera and the location and the rotation of that camera. Right, I'm just going to move this up a little bit, and I could probably rotate this out, and this should be enough to get a sense of where things are at, right? So now I can sort of move my rig rail, right? Except I'm going to lock the orientation to the rig rail so that we're rotating around. You can see it's like twisting, sort of shifting its yaw, but we're starting to get something going. I'm going to go to the camera, and I'm actually going to change this to a pretty wide angle lens, so that we can get a better sense of of what we're looking at. So film back is 16, so it copied the camera, so we're retaining all of that, all of those settings. I want to change this lens. Let's just do a 20mm lens for now, and then check out what that looks like. I want to be able to get a good sense of what we're seeing. So, okay, so here's like an area where we're passing through one of the apartments, and we'll see another apartment, and then we're seeing that other apartment, and then we're seeing inside more, right? So this is kind of exactly what I want, except I might tweak the camera settings a little bit more, and I'll certainly change the orientation, lock orientation. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Right, so I just turned off the lock orientation. Okay, so now I have my camera, I've got my rig rail. I want to create a new shot. Let's go into our content browser and go into sequencer, right? I'm going to right click cinematic. I'm going to add another level sequence, and I'm going to call this spiral. Let's go back into our sequence. I'm going to add a shot. Do I want to do that here? Oops. Or I'm going to do that here at the sort of top level of that. And I'm going to add my spiral shot, which is this. I'm going to stretch this out all the way to 720 because I just want to fill this in. And then I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to add actor to sequence. I'm going to find my cine camera spiral. Well, let's just add the rig rail and the cine camera spiral. Right, and so you can see, actually, if we go to the master, at any point, so let's go back into, let's change our frame rate. What we want to do is change the length of this particular shot to go all the way to 720 frames. And so I'm just going to click on this to set the length of my sequence to the full length of my master sequence, right? So now what I should be able to do is stretch out my my scene here and stretch out my camera cut to cover the entirety of that 720 frames, right? So now if I move my track head here, it's gonna move over, or it's gonna show me that camera or that shot. Hopefully I'm making sense. So she climbs the stairs, right? I actually think I might move this later on, right? I'm gonna have tracking shots of essentially the character passing by apartments, and then this will become my turning point where she actually walks over and then knocks the ball and then we'll have the scene of the model falling, and then that's essentially the turning point of this film, right? So now we need to go into this spiral shot and then start adding some keyframes to our rig rail here, based on the current position on rail, right? So what we might want to do is, let's just look. Let's just focus to our camera. I'm going to do the lock orientation, and we can start adjusting our position on rail just to get a sense of which are the key moments, right? Which are the key points where I'm actually looking into an apartment, and I might want to note that. In fact, that's what I'm going to do, right? So here's a shot into an apartment. I'm going to note that our current position on rail here is 0.12. And so I'm just going to grab my sketchbook. You're not seeing this now. In fact, let's just go in and just create a Word document. Right, just to have some notes, right? Spiral key positions, right? So 0.12 is one of them. And so I'm just gonna drag this forward. And I like seeing something like that. So 0.168. There's another one here. 0.248. .296. Right, so I'm just noting like what are some potentially good shots that I want to make sure I at least consider capturing. This might be okay. 0.336, and I'll just type okay because I'm not sure I actually want to use that one. Right, but anything that has my little portal window could be quite good. And so that's 0.424. 0.424. Oops, I don't want to move the time. I want to move this current position on rail. So let's just keep going. Here's one, 0.47. 472. This one I really like. So let's say good. Oops. And then let's keep going up. This one's also kind of okay. This one's just, these are going to give me a little more variety, even though I'm not seeing like the round window. You know, I don't want all of the shots necessarily to look that way. So 0.56. Maybe I'll just note that as being okay. Here's a good one. So 0.6. Here's a good one. 0.648. All right, so you get the idea. 0.78. 784. And 824. Right. So what this is going to allow me to do is try to precisely locate these key moments into the gaps I have um, between my other shots, so that I can make sure that this spiral movement is sort of happening. Um, what's the right word I'm looking for? That during the spiral movement, I am actually seeing these key moments rather than like staring at a wall, for instance. Um, okay, so there is that. I may also want to add another instance of my character to essentially move alongside my camera. And so I might add another skeletal mesh to my scene here. And let's reposition our spiral rig rail back to 0. But before we do that, let's just set a key, right, at the start. And at the end, and we'll just set this to 1, right? So now what we're doing is we're moving through our sequence, right? So now if I hit play, let's go back and view this. I'm going to go to my master sequence, right? I don't really want to see these other 2 shots. I'm just going to click on maybe we can just go in here. Well, let's just, I guess, watch this whole thing. Just climbing up. Here's the movement. It's a little fast. Right. Obviously, we don't want this camera to like roll left and right the way it is. But I think the speed is pretty good. What I might do is just slow it down a touch. One way I can slow it down is to go to this key, and we can change this to say 0.2, and we can go to the last key and set this to say 0.8. And so now what we're doing is we're moving a little bit slower because we're only moving from 0.2 to 0.8. So now if we hit play, let's just see what that starts to look like. Right, just she's continuing to move up. If we go into our master sequence, I might actually want to move this back a little bit. Right. Except I want to not have the camera kind of tilting side to side like that, because that will start to make us dizzy after a while. However, I do want the camera to be pointing outward. And so one thing I could do is I could actually go into the rig rail and And so with my rig rail selected, I can uncheck this box. And what I can do instead is, so you can see like now the camera is just facing in the same orientation, right? So one thing I can do is just rotate my camera, right? So if we go to our camera, let's set this to 0. Let's go to F to find it, right? I actually want the camera to be facing 180. Right, so now camera is facing outside and moving. So that's already better because we're not yawing over, right? But as this camera goes from here to here, we actually want the camera to rotate. So I can go to the camera component and I can start keying the rotation, right? So let's say I want to set the key or set a key for rotation here. And as I get over here, I might want to adjust the rotation to this point here, and then I can set a key, right? So now I can see that the, oops, let's undo this. Yeah. Do all of that for a moment. So we like this. So from, let's say this point, I want to set my yaw key. Then we want to actually rotate to 2. What's 180 plus 90? 270. Right? Yeah. So we want to go up, and then the camera rotates, and then we see we may want to set another key there. Right, and then at this point, you may want to rotate again. You want to set this view here. And then we see another one. Right? So let's set a key here. And let's just rotate the camera. Well, we still can't. Let's undo that. We want this to be close to 90, something like that. We actually want to delete this key. Actually, let's keep that key. Let's go back to the master sequence for a moment. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Let's go back into the sequence, right? So we're facing where we want to face. camera rotates and we're continuing to climb up. We see this. By this point, we're going to want to keep rotating to about 180. Right, so we see this passing, and then we go past this apartment as we climb. We can set our key here. Actually, I'm going to move this key a little bit farther back. And by this point, I might want to be looking over here again. Something weird is happening here. Oh, it's going backwards. So let's delete this key. Let's delete this key. Let's go back. So let's establish our key here. And we want to say rotate this direction. So what's happening is these numbers are reversing. So what I might want to, or what I'm probably going to have to do is just hard number these in. So this is all I wonder if there's a way preventing that from happening. So let's go back to our master sequence. I'm just going to move this shot up. So just this. All right, so let's go back into the sequence now. So I'm going to delete all of these keys. Let's try again. Let's try it in a different way. So I do want this rotation. This is working fine. So from roughly at this point to this point, 243. 270. So I want to make this positive 270. And then there is this negative 89 key. So let's zoom into this. Can I just control and zoom in? Right, so I'm going to delete this key. Control, zoom back out. So I want to keep this at 270. And at this point, I might want to change this to about 360. And keep this at 360. Up until there. Right, you can see it's changed to 0. And what it's going to do is it's going to flip me all the way around. So that's annoying. So I'm going to hard code this one to 360. And then what I could do is right, I'm at frame 375. So I'm going to set this to the next frame, and I'm going to set this to 0. Right, so there should be just sort of a seamless jump back to 0. And then at this point, I want to rotate to about, I think about 90. And I'm going to keep climbing. I'm going to set a key at 90 here. And now I should be able to do something like this. So now this should retain these numbers. So every time I go to 360, I'm essentially going to have to jump back to 0 because the negative numbers they're causing some problems. So let's set a frame or a key here. See, now this jumped to minus 180 roughly. So I'm just going to hard code this back in. And I don't know why that's happening, but it's not something I want. So then let's go to 270. Right, so rotate 270. Let's set a key here. And right around here, we want to be back at 360. Right, so this key, for whatever reason, I'm going to delete this. I want to add a key and make this 270. And this is going to end at 360. Okay, good. So let's play this all the way through and let's see that make sure that it's working. Right, still a little bit fast. Right, but you get the idea. So now we can go into our master sequence. I'm going to drag this back down. Drag this back down. Right, so this is background. Here we have the child climbing up. And I want she's climbing, and then she sees the apartment, and then another apartment, and then let's say another apartment. And then maybe at this point, we can transition to another scene. So what I might even do is copy this. I think if I hit Control W or Alt drag this down, right? I can end that shot here. And then what I might want to do is, actually, I think what I might want to do is, let's just press this child. I feel like I need another scene here before she knocks the thing over. And then maybe it ends with the toys collapsing. So going past here, going past here. So maybe at this point to about this point. So let's note what that is. So from frame 383. So let's go back to our notes. Frame 383 to 452. I need something. And then she keeps walking up, she keeps walking up. She's walking up. She knocks the ball over. And then from this point on, will be the scene of the toy dropping. So let's go ahead and create a shot for that, just so I have that in my scene as well. So let's go into the content browser. I'm going to add a cinematic level sequence, and let's call this toy drop. If we go into our sequencer now, I can add my shot. Oops. Add my shot, toy drop, and I'm just going to shorten my toy drop to be let's just go in here, set this to 24 frames per second. Let's go into the master. Right, so we need 64 frames. So go into here. I'm going to type let's go to 64. And that's now the new length of my composition. And so here's our toy drop sequence. And so now we need to set up our shot. And so let's go and find, let's go back to our lit mode. Let's go and find our, right, and again, like I'm probably gonna redo this so that it looks much more dramatic, but I'm gonna just use a camera. So I'm just gonna duplicate this Teddy cam again. Edit, duplicate, right? I'm gonna rename this CineCam toy drop. Right, I could have just dragged a new camera in there. In fact, let's not bother with that. I'm just gonna add my own cine camera actor here and just we'll practice changing our settings again. So I want to, oops, let's pilot this camera, but before we do that, let's change the name. Edit, rename, CineCam toy drop. Right, and then I can go in here and pilot my CineCam toy drop. Right, so this is where it's all about framing that shot, and this is where setting the lenses is going to be much more important. This is kind of something like a close-up. So let's do 16:9 DSLR. Let's set this to 85. Oh, maybe I want it to be flatter. Let's set this to 200. Right, I'm gonna obviously have to change my focus, right? Let's unpilot this. I'm gonna move my wall, and then I'll need to build lighting again, but let's pilot the camera again. Right, just wanna frame it just so it's almost like a section view. Let's slow down my camera speed so I can fine tune it. Okay, something like that. Actually, I want the stair to be more in the shot. So maybe I'll do something like this instead. And then let's get the focus working here. Where's my toy drop camera? So let's just focus on the stair for now. And then I want to adjust. Let's draw. Right, so like somewhere in the middle. And then what I might do is change my current aperture down to 2. Maybe I want it to be 1. So now if we simulate, you can see, right, the ball is doing what I want. And so my ball will definitely be my placeholder, right? Okay, so let's get rid of the cube. Well, let's unpilot this for a moment. I don't want this cube. I'm just going to use the ball. I'm going to go into my toy drop shot, and I'm going to add actor to sequence. Find the toy drop camera, right? And then I'm going to want to also add the sphere. Let's just type sphere. How many spheres do I have? I have 2 spheres. I think it's the second sphere. So I want to add this actor to my sequence. Or is it already in there? Oh, it is already in there. Okay. So here's my sphere. And then what I want to be able to do is I want to add a certain property to it, right? I want to be able to add its physics. So let's just make sure this is set to movable. It is. Event, maybe? Static mesh component. Is this it? I think this is it. Let's delete that. So what I'm looking for here is the ability to turn on physics for this particular. So in our sphere, simulate physics. I might have to do a quick Google search because I thought it should be. All right, so let's do a quick search. UE5 sequencer add physics or enable gravity to sphere. Okay, simulating physics in sequencer. So I'm gonna, well, let's just keep it going. Under transform, okay. This is the part that I want. So under static mesh body instance, so let's take a look here. I want to add a static mesh component. Under body instance, I want to enable grab. There it is. So basically, I want to keyframe right. So I want gravity to be enabled only at this point. Okay, so hopefully that does it. I'm just going to build lighting real quick. And I'm hoping that this will be the last part of the cinematic that I'm creating. And you know, I'm going to continue to tweak it, but this is just a rough outline. Again, this is just a proof of concept, just trying to get the narrative that I'm looking for, and I can add more details to it down the line. I can tweak the shots. I can add more elements. In fact, there are a couple of other things I do want to add, which I may or may not have time for, but I just want to get the basic bones in my cinematic so that the narrative is clear, right? There's this hopefulness of this child climbing the stair. I'll have maybe some audio and a voiceover that's describing a little bit about the project and an additional layer of the narrative to describe what's going on. And at the end, there's a symbolic falling of the toy that indicates kind of a dashed dream, right? So let's go back and let's play this and see what it looks like. She's climbing up. Oh, look at all the brand new apartments. Very shiny, right? I do think there needs to be something else happening here, which I'll insert in one of these transitions, but I do want to show the repetition of the apartment, so there needs to be a certain amount, and then we have the ball hit, and then where's our sphere? I think the reason why that didn't show up is I do need to simulate physics. Let's uncheck enable gravity, and I do think now if I play, whoa, weird things are happening. Okay, So I'm gonna have to tweak this a little bit. So let's stop that. Let's just start it from here. I'm gonna simulate, right? Nothing is happening because it's the sequencer that's gonna trigger the physics to play. So um, let's try this one more time. Simulate. So here's a child walking up, seeing the apartments. Knocking the ball over. Um, do I need to also have this on? There's two spiral shots in here, which I don't need. Okay. So let's play this. Let's play this. There goes the ball. It's moving very slowly. It's kind of working, but it's not. So let's stop the simulation. Let's start the simulation and let's hit play. Huh. Right, this is where the ball should be bouncing, right? So for some reason, it's not working. The way I expected it to work. Let's see if there's any hints. So I want to simulate physics. Okay, so do I just not need enable gravity? Let's go into our toy draw. I'm going to delete this track. Oops, let's undo that. So here I'm going to set physics to run. Let's delete the enable gravity track. Okay. It's kind of exactly what that person did. And play. I don't know why it's throwing off my instrument report. Well, let's just play this and see if it triggers the ball to drop. No. So let's just make sure that that's on. So don't get this to be off. Let's stop. Turn that off. As we scrub through, yeah, so there that goes. Huh. There's a weird I wonder if it's because let's shorten this. Just in case it's trying to do too much. No. It's running quite slow, and I don't quite know why. But it's doing what I am expecting it to do, which is just turning on the physics. But it's moving really slowly. It's as if it's not calculating the physics fast enough, or it's doing too many things. So I'll have to tweak that, figure out what's going on there. If we just play this, let's see if we can get this to work. So let's simulate and hit play. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to tweak that and figure that out. Or just figure it out. I don't think there's anything to tweak. I think it's working, it's just not. It's also not displaying on the camera. I should see the ball here, but I'm not seeing it. Okay. Oh, is this why? Let's delete that for a moment. Oh, I wonder if it's because I'm recording right now. I'm gonna try stopping the recording and try it and see if that works. I'll be right back. Oh, well, that wasn't it. I'm just not even seeing it in this camera. I don't understand. Well, let's try stopping and restarting. So okay. find our sequencer and open it up. Um, oh, what happened? Maybe. What? You gotta be kidding me. Here's my spiral, but my sequence wasn't saved. Well, at least I didn't lose my footage. Ugh. But it didn't change the... I did all of those rotations on the camera and that didn't save. Okay, so that's annoying, but at least the camera rig rails are. So this didn't save my sequence or the sequences that I had created. So I'll have to do that again. If there's an auto save. Let's Google UE5 auto save. This is exactly what's happening. I guess it has something to do with the autosave. Um, but I think I lost all that work. But whatever, no big deal. Um, do it again. So what do we need to do? Well, first off, I'm just going to delete these. These are all the auto-saved files, it looks like. Um, and I'm going to go into the sequencer and create a new sequence. But actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this during the work session that we have scheduled for later. That way we're going to do it. I can show you the steps as we go in real time. Okay, so this is kind of a bit of a time warp. You're probably seeing this after we went through the tutorial, but you'll sort of be doing it ahead of time, if that makes sense. Try to think fourth dimensionally. All right, see you guys soon.